Okay, we are live, Chair.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to the February 4th meeting of the Asheville Planning and Zoning Commission. I am Chair Barton and we'll begin with a roll call.
Chair Barton.
Present.
Vice Chair Cycle.
Present.
Commissioner Faircloth.
Present.
Commissioner Bell.
Present.
Commissioner Anzalito. Present. Commissioner Zuewska.
Present.
And Commissioner Burl.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Palmquist. As always, we receive public comment for our meetings by a variety of means. In writing in advance of the meeting, we receive public comment submitted to pzcommissioners@asheville.nc.gov until 5 p.m. the day before the meeting. In person, we accept public comment on items that appear on our agenda. Members of the public can speak for 3 minutes, or if representing a larger group, for a maximum of 10 minutes. We will begin, as we always do, with our land acknowledgement. As we are gathering today as the Planning and Zoning Commission, the body tasked with reviewing and advising on appropriate land use in the city of Asheville, it is fitting to acknowledge the storied history of this land. We occupy the land of the Cherokee people, who have stewarded and been in relationship with these mountains and waterways from time immemorial. This land is occupied through violence, oppression, coercion, broken treaties, and forced relocation. Please join me in expressing respect and gratitude for the present-day Eastern Band of Cherokee, the Cherokee Nation, the United Gadua Band of Cherokee, and all of our indigenous neighbors, as well as the past and present marginalized community members, as we seek to join in the healing of the indelible trauma that is embedded in this land. Thank you. Before we move further into the administrative section of the meeting, some of you may be here to hear the Costco presentation, and we wanted to go ahead and acknowledge that a continuance has been requested by the applicant. This is the second time that a continuance has been requested. With everyone's permission, maybe we can jump that to the top of the meeting and get through that first. Any objection?
No.
So a continuance was initially requested for the March 4th, our next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. That's been amended to April 1st. As a representative of the applicant here and wish to share information about the status of the project and why the continuance request?
Sure. Some changes have been made based off of the staff report that we received last month. There is an all-hands-on-deck meeting with staff tomorrow over on Charlotte Street. So we'll be seeing most of the folks that are on the staff side there tomorrow and working on it. In terms of the extended continuance period, we didn't want to get stuck in a time crunch, and so we went ahead and asked for 60 days instead of the 1 month.
Thank you. And could you state your name, sir?
Derek Allen, I represent Costco.
Thank you. You know, we do see continuances from time to time. This is a complicated project. Understand there's a lot of moving parts. It does present a challenge in meeting management to continually reserve space on an agenda. So if a continuance is being requested for April 1st, my recommendation would be that's the last continuance that we provide, and that the applicant come prepared to present and be heard. Any other comments from commissioners or questions for the applicant about the continuance request?
Thanks for your comments, Commissioner Barton, and yeah, I agree with it. I mean, I understand the applicant's asking for continuance, and I want to, give you room to work through stuff. But I agree with Chair Barton. I don't want to keep continuing something. I want to, press forward. That being said, I know there's a lot. I guess part of the reason for that is, I'll explain, is one, we want to keep pushing things through the agenda, and two, I do understand it's hard for the public watching, when stuff gets continued to move. There's a lot of public comment on this one, a lot of it in support. So I want to make sure people are able to, if it keeps getting continued, they'll start ignoring, flyers and stuff. So I want to make sure people are able to, be present for when it's talked through. And two, I guess I want to just kind of ask, do you feel like there's anything we can do to help move it forward, or, I mean, the all-hands-on-deck meeting with the staff is really, what you need? Is it, like, I just want to make sure this commission's, like, putting adequate, like, I guess, pressure on the applicant and staff to, like, move this.
Not to get too much into it, but the project has a lot of staff asks, and not just staff inside of the city, but also if you look at the bigger part of that, which are how it ties into existing transportation networks and how it ties in with NCDOT and MSD. There are a lot of things that go with it. And so while it is a big building that's, kind of playing on a big parking lot, you're talking about, Brownsville considerations, you're talking about transportation considerations. There may be an annexation piece, how the road ties in from one city road to a state road, and who's going to own the road. So there are a lot of things that go with it. So as we continue to work on that, ask questions of staff, ask questions of us, and help us push those things along, because coming up with the right project and balancing the different concerns and wants of the different groups that are that are the collective staff is what we're trying to do, and make it such that you can afford to build it.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate you talking about it a little bit, and our other commissioners talking about it.
Yeah, and this is one that the continuance is being driven by trying to make the design work. And so I'm mostly out of that because the design professionals are dealing directly with the staff on that, and that's really the impetus for tomorrow's meeting.
Okay.
To that point, with all the complications and we did review this last night, so, we understand that there are a lot of design complications. I definitely see that, and I appreciate the applicant and the design team working towards trying to solve those. Would it be better to, instead of a date certain, April 1st, to continue to a date decided between the applicant and the chair or the planning department?
The thing is, keeping the record notice alive is kind of the reason that we do that, so it gets continued to a date certain, and that keeps the record notice alive. And I know Ms. Ashley will say the same thing. If it looks like it might drag beyond, the April meeting, for example, we might pull it off and then re-notice it altogether. We've not discussed that with staff, but that's how you would, I'm answering the question that you were trying to ask.
Yeah.
Ms. Ashley, anything to add on that? Okay.
That would be correct. So you can continue to a date certain, or at some point, as you're indicating, it would just be pulled and then be re-advertised, so that then the public would be aware of when it really was going forward again.
And in that instance, can we ask that it be pulled before the agenda is publicized? Because I think sometimes what's confusing, it gets on the agenda, and then the public may have questions about, is it happening, is it not happening, right? So if we can pull it and then re-advertise, can we do that before the April or whatever agenda gets publicized?
Yeah, typically we will know when the agenda goes out, if we've gotten resubmitted plans by then. So timing-wise, it should work out where we'll know by then if the project has resubmitted plans and is going forward before the agenda goes live. So we can certainly, I think that'll happen that way.
My last question was, I know originally it was set for city council this month, but I guess, it's obviously being pushed, but is it already on like the April city council agenda, or how does that work, staff?
It's kind of penciled in, or, up in Maggie Burleson's head, and she's got everything figured out. So she's constantly got all the public hearing items bouncing around. So she knows it's on the horizon.
Okay.
It's maybe penciled in for a potential date. We'll let her know after this meeting if it gets continued to April. Then she can move some things around. But she's always juggling public hearings and whatnot on the agenda availability.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you. So with that, I will make a motion to continue item 4 on our agenda, the request to amend the conditional zoning for the properties located at 264 and 274 Enka Heritage Parkway to date certain of April 1st, 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll see you back here in April. So if you're here for Costco, we'll see you back in April. Jumping back to the administrative section of the meeting, we'd need to approve the minutes from the January 7th, 2026 meeting. Any questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve the meeting minutes from the January 7th, 2026 meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next up in the administrative section, update from committee liaisons and work groups. I'll start here just with an acknowledgement that we had a really robust discussion as a work session / retreat of Planning and Zoning Commission. So thanks for staff and my fellow commissioners' engagement in that. We mostly heard a deeper dive into the process for UDO and comp plan update with staff, as well as understood some of the factors at play and any incremental zoning reforms that may be possible in the meantime. Any reflections or thoughts about our work session and the work ahead from other commissioners?
The comment I was going to make is, well, that was a very exciting and really productive work session, and I'm just so glad to see this work moving forward. Just from our work group, I'm making kind of a mental note that the work that Commissioner Cycle and I have done to pull together the plans, some 25 plans that we summarized, that we went through, like, all the work that we did do, I'll make sure is kind of at a finish point, and we can hand it off to the consultants once they get started. And just want to continue that work. And we really paused that work because we knew this effort was going to be ongoing, so it didn't really make sense to keep researching away. But there is a lot of good stuff there, and we'll make it available.
And for members of the public who may be tuning in, there will be an RFP that the city's releasing this month. Is that still this month or next? To solicit a consultant team to guide the process through comp plan and UDO updates. So yeah, a lot will happen. It will take a long time, but getting the right team in place is really important. So look forward to seeing that RFP released, and hopefully lots of interest in helping Asheville reform its land use regulation.
I'm sorry, are you done? One thing I'd like to request to the chair and vice chair is maybe we add it as a rolling agenda item under administrative, just brief update on where the process is, not saying it has to be like staff going through like every single thing that's happening, but at least like, hey, here's the next milestone, or here's the next public engagement meeting on that, just because I think myself and other commissioners want to be more involved in just us knowing clearly like what's coming up next. We can plug ourselves in as needed. So I'll leave it to staff to structure like how much information wants to be shared at each point, but I think it'd be nice to just keep it in the conversation monthly.
Yeah, I agreed. That was something we talked about. Thank you, Commissioner Faircloth, for bringing that up, that it would be a good just kind of evergreen agenda item that will continue. Some updates will be stay tuned. Some updates will be a little deeper dive.
I had two data-related items that I wanted to update on from our meeting. One, overall, very excited about this project, and I think it's going to be a very fruitful beneficial thing for the city. I was also extremely excited to hear that Vision Zero is like a priority for this effort, and for anybody, a member of the public who's unfamiliar with Vision Zero, it's the general goal to limit the number of crash fatalities to zero. It's a really ambitious goal. To my knowledge, I think there's only 1 or 2 cities that have ever done it. In Jersey City, it's like 1 square mile. But it's a top crash fatalities are like a top 5 killer in the United States. and it is one of the things that we can do the most about. So it's a passion project and a pocket interest of mine specifically. So with that said, I kind of wanted to just voice an interest in getting like an informal group to do some exploratory analysis on crash fatalities and using some of the data that we have available from like the safety action plan. And then personally, I mean, in my day-to-day, I've already, in a previous job, done some work related to Vision Zero. And then my current role, I do data analysis every day. And so I think I would just like to do a deep dive, maybe work informally, talk with some other stakeholders within the city. And then potentially leverage a couple of colleagues that I have from other cities who have some insight on how Vision Zero is working in their city. And if that is something that we feel okay about doing, I just wanted to voice my interest in doing that effort and check the pulse if anybody was interested in being a part of it.
Would that be like a working group of the commission? We'd have to figure out the logistics of that. If you're just kind of reporting back on information, you're not making decisions or policy.
Yeah, so it should be really truly informal and a working group, which doesn't go into the point of a subcommittee, which has to be noticed. Then it really, you can't really have formal direction. You can't be tasked by this board to go do something. But if you're expressing an interest, I think that's how other work groups have come along. And then, as we've had with the stormwater and anti-displacement, just kind of work on their own or maybe with one other person and then report back. So you can, generally, the commission can discuss it, but wouldn't it be a directive for,
Sure, of course.
to create it?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That does make sense. I think that's my intention. I just wanted to do
Let
some,
people know that you're.
let people know I'm doing it, do some exploratory data analysis and come back and just share what I found.
Thank you for offering that, and I think that the standing agenda item could be a good opportunity, especially if we get like a look ahead on what's coming down the pike for each of these core competencies within the commission to lend some feedback at the appropriate time. So yeah, I think that's a great time on our agenda to bring that in.
I know you mentioned maybe having some crash data incorporated into future staff reports. So if you had some guidance about maybe, what data source is the best one to use and how to present that data, maybe that's something you could kind of present to everyone and then staff could learn how to do, and then we could start doing it for future staff reports.
Yeah, that would be extremely helpful.
Cool.
Thank you. Any other updates from liaisons and work groups?
I did have one more comment from the retreat, looking at the notes that were provided afterwards. So we did this exercise where we prioritized some changes that we would like to see in the UDO and the comp plan, and so we didn't get to really report out on those. I read through them, really interesting, great to see, so I just wondered if there was any discussion that we might want to have, or if we might want to read those off just for the public record, or provide the document in our folder.
Why don't we include that on the next agenda so that we can, kind of get an update on the RFP and scoping of the consultant, and then a report back on this body's priorities as it moves into kind of a contract phase.
Sure. Yeah.
My last thought on the agenda retreat, and I talked a little bit about it there, was obviously there's been numerous other studies and work groups, from the affordable housing plan to the missing middle and probably 10 other things I'm not aware of. But I guess my question to staff is I know y'all are going to be pulling on a lot of that work that's already been done. Is there like a library or like a place all that information is deposited? If we want to do homework and start reading through that, what would staff advise we go to? How would we find that information?
Yeah, we've been working on collating all those plans and studies and kind of, analyzing them for relevancy and appropriateness and, understanding how they kind of tie into the comp plan update, how they currently function as providing policy for planning in the city. So I expect that we could have something, publicly accessible that we could share with the P and Z and the public. Maybe not too long of a time. So we can definitely, we have that information for the most part. I think it's just a matter of kind of putting it all together and making it easily to use. So we can definitely share that out.
Sure, thanks, because I just speak for one person on the commission, but I view that as like, the question out there is like, what is our role in the process? I kind of view that as our role. It's like, hey, let's make sure the homework that's already been done is being used for the, the final thing. So thanks for being on board of sharing that.
I appreciate you,
Almost call me Jared.
I did not. For bringing that up, because I think it does take a lot of mental energy and time to like find all these reports. So to bringing that up and for staff for collating all of that and being able to make that accessible, I think that it will be very helpful. Because I agree, the city has a lot of plans that it's spent money on and time and resources on, and I think having all that together.
But there's some good like empirical and like qualitative data in there that like
Exactly. Yeah.
the new consultant, person guiding this can use too. So I'm sure it's already in staff's work somewhere.
Yeah, we started doing that, and I think making it available to you all in the public is a good next step. So it's great.
Well, thank you. If there's no other report backs, the only other item under administrative that I'll mention is for public interest, there was a project that came through, got a lot of attention, set a record for our longest meeting, known as 767 Haw Creek. And that is, it came through this body and appeared before council. There is a subsequent meeting at the Board of Adjustment, February 23rd, starting at 8:45 a.m. to hear an appeal of an administrative determination of whether the project revisions constituted a minor modification. So I just wanted to kind of share that with anyone tuned in to matters that come before Planning and Zoning Commission. It's not coming back here, but if you didn't get enough and want to hear more, tune into Board of Adjustment February 23rd.
Yeah, and it can be viewed virtually, but those are quasi-judicial meetings, so you can't participate in it unless you have standing, but you can watch it. And at 8:45 in the morning, which is unusual, it's a really long one, that's the best way probably to view it.
Yep. Thank you. We'll now move into the public hearings portion of our agenda. So first up, we have item number 5, a request to conditionally rezone the property located at 383 North Louisiana Avenue from Office 1 to Office Conditional Zone, Office 1 CZ. The property is located, the property's been identified on the agenda. The property owner is Betty Hampton, Melissa Ferris, John Drake, and Mark Drake. Applicant's contact is Mr. Warren Sugg, and the planner coordinating review is Sam Starbaum. Mr. Starbaum.
Yes, thank you, Chair Barton and members of the commission. It is good to be before you again. For the record, my name is Sam Starbaum. I am a Planner 3 with the Planning and Urban Design Department. Of course, my presentation on this one will follow the same format as all my other presentations, but before I even get into the maps, before I get into the analysis and whether or not this is compliant and meets some of these land use goals, I do want to spend a lot of time on this slide discussing this. Why is this here before the Planning and Zoning Commission? This is a unique but not unheard of situation in which you will have a level 2 conditional zoning. I want to talk about why that is. So back in March of 2025, planning staff, mostly parts of Will's entitlements team, worked to develop zoning text amendments that would entice development along transit-supported corridors. This is one of them. Now, there were several amendments in this. 2 of them were parking reductions, eliminating parking minimums. The others were changing thresholds. So if you met certain affordability thresholds and you kept your building within a certain gross floor area, instead of going to a level 3, which goes to Planning and Zoning Commission and then City Council, that would be kept at the level 2 review. That means that only goes to the Technical Review Committee and tends to be a little more expedited. Time is of the essence in development. So this is a unique instance where this meets all those affordability and gross floor area thresholds. So this is technically a level 2. However, the base zoning district that Office 1 does have a building footprint maximum of 4,000 square feet. So that means that this needs that conditional zoning for technical modifications for that building height, which is also going to be exceeded. We'll get into that later. It does need that technical modification for that building footprint. This has a footprint of 31,898 square feet. That's to be expected for a building accommodating 89 units. So this is why this is a level 2 CZ. Now, out of that fact comes two logical questions. Why is this not going to a residential expansion district, which you see all the time with CZs? And then also, why is this not a variance? This is simply not a residential expansion for the sole reason that we don't allow it, right? So the UDO is perfectly clear in section 778 that expansion zoning districts are only allowed for level 3 projects. And again, because of those thresholds, this is not a level 3 project and therefore can't go to that residential expansion. And then to the second question of why this is not a variance, is something where the Board of Adjustment only meets on the 4th Monday of each month and tends to add 8 to 10 weeks to the development review timeline. Now, this project is applying for LIHTC credits and must become entitled by the end of April, beginning of May. So time is of the essence here, and both staff and the applicant felt that it was most appropriate to go through a conditional zoning process. So again, unique but not unheard of, this is a level 2 review for a conditional zoning request that will take this from Office 1 to Office 1 CZ. This is not a level 3, this is not an expansion district, and they are treated a little differently. So we will get into this. And now I will jump into sort of the familiar rhythm, right? So we'll start with location. We'll look at two maps here. One of them is zoomed out on the left, looking at where this is. I would, of course, call this West Central Asheville. On the right side of the left image, you can see downtown. You can see the river. Moving furthest south, you can see the urban outline of Haywood. Moving less south, you can see where Patton is. And, of course, the subject parcel, that 3.13 acre undeveloped site, is there just north of Patton and east of the New Leicester Highway interchange. On the right image, which is more zoomed in, you can see exactly where this is in relation to Patton Avenue and the rest of the neighborhood. Again, just below Hazel Mill along North Louisiana Avenue. And we'll get into more about Patton in just a few slides. Again, I had talked about this in this first slide. This is zoned office, and we are going to Office 1 CZ. This is not residential expansion. This is shown in Exhibits A and A1 in your packets. The only thing of note on this slide and this next slide are really just that these districts that you see in the existing zoning landscape and the proposed zoning landscape is all of these are what we would expect and hope for in terms of our future land use map and also Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan for urban centers and transit supportive corridors. So that is part of the consideration in making our recommendation is what this zoning is, what it's going to, and what it says in the comp plan. We find this is wholly appropriate. So that brings us to the plan. This is the building in discussion. This is, again, 89 units. It will be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. It does have 116 parking spaces. The required minimum is 0, again, because of those zoning text amendments from March 2025. There is a maximum of 179, so it is 62 spaces below the maximum. We're finding that since we had that March 2025 amendment, people are still providing parking, but it is just substantially less than the maximum where most people floated. This building will be a 4- and 5-story mix. What this plan does not show is the considerable topographic change. Moving south from Hazel Mill Road, there is a considerable slope there that is part of the grading challenge, so it will appear 5 stories on some side. It does also meet all the site landscaping elements as required under UDO section 711.2. You have your street trees, your vehicle use area, your building impact, and then because it is adjacent to an RM residential multifamily district, it does have that buffer to buffer against that property owner. The applicant is also going to be required to provide open space and tree canopy preservation. I have talked about that in the memo, but generally what I will say on this slide is that you can see where it is proposed on the southeast side. It will be a mix of recreational and natural open space, and that's where some of those tree canopy preservation trees will be preserved, but they are sort of shaded out and it doesn't come as through perhaps on the television. So What does this mean for technical modifications? I have already discussed a lot of this. So the first two major ones that need discussion are this 4,000 square foot building footprint, right? That is what is present in the underlying zoning district of Office 1. Because this is an 89 unit apartment, it will have a building footprint of 31,898 square feet. So that is a technical modification to exceed that. And again, because of that slope and because the underlying zoning district has a building height maximum of 40 feet, the applicants are seeking a technical modification to exceed that by 8 feet. In addition to those two, which I have already discussed, the applicant is proposing internal sidewalks at 5 feet, and then there will also be sidewalks along Hazel Mill and North Louisiana Avenue. Those will be at 5 feet instead of 10 feet. So those are the technical modifications you're looking at. And this is what the building will look like at scale. I think this slide, more so than the second slide, is really great visual at painting what that 4 or 5 story split on the third elevation from the top, which is the north elevation. You can see where that grade really changes and becomes that 5th story. So that is what that looks like, and that sort of paints the story of topography. In terms of materiality, this is pretty appropriate and common what you would see in terms of Asheville urban form and the design language. You're going to have manufactured stone, veneer, brick, and then fiber siding. These are common materials seen throughout a lot of Asheville apartment complexes. So that is about the design level, the design as it is on the site, and why this is before the PZC. So we'll get now into how and where this complies with some of these elements. And staff tends to look at 4 things which we bring before you for all our presentations: the surrounding zoning, the future land use, the infrastructure needs, and does this meet the goals of the comprehensive plan. And as I had alluded to earlier, these are wholly and totally appropriate for what you would find for urban centers and for transit supportive corridors, which you would find in the Asheville plan. Office is existing. This is going to office just with conditional zoning. Staff finds that this is appropriate. Insofar as the future land use map is concerned, this is considered a traditional neighborhood, and that is something that offers opportunities for infill housing in order to improve the supply and mix of housing options. And staff finds that this proposal does exactly that. If you go to the existing zoning, you can see that mix and diversity. You have RS8, RM6, RM16 to the east, and there is the housing supply diversity we're looking for, and then there is also the affordability component. The applicant is proposing that 100% of these units are affordable. I will let him speak to the level, but this is something that is also going to add diversity in terms of the applicant and what this is being proposed. So this is compatible with future land use. Insofar as infrastructure is concerned, we look at 4 things: transportation, water, sewer, and stormwater. Water and sewer, check. There are letters of commitment. There are allocation requests. Those are fairly easy. There is an existing roadway network in place, but as we know, that is not the whole transportation picture. This is also important because the sidewalk adds a walkability component to that urban center along Patton, which has retail, restaurants, and commercial, and groceries. There is that Ingalls at the corner of New Leicester and Patton. And then also, and most importantly, this is already served by Asheville Rides Transit. This is within a walk shed of the the WE1 and the W5 lines. So this is served by the existing infrastructure. This is the infill envisioned that we look for traditional neighborhoods because the plans are in place and the infrastructure is there. So that brings us to this last element, comprehensive plan review. Does this meet the goals of the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan? And for a lot of the reasons I have already spoke about, it simply does. Again, we're prioritizing greater densities of development overall throughout the city as appropriate. And we do have a preferred growth option in Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan that says we should put density along urban centers and transit corridors. This is in that area in that preferred growth map. Again, we're ensuring that there is a diverse mix of housing at all affordability levels for a resilient economy, and then we're providing infill development, again, because this is already served by transit. It already has those elements that we talked about for infrastructure. And again, I say this pretty much every time I'm before you, right? Like staff is not saying this is a perfect development, but what we are saying is when you take the preponderance of evidence for the surrounding zoning, for the future land use, for the existing infrastructure and what is being proposed, it substantially complies with all of these. Not 100%, but substantially complies, and that is why we recommend approval. So I would be happy to stand for any questions you may have, before I guess I answer where we are in this process, here we are. It did have the initial TRC review that was approved with administrative revisions on December 1st, and it will be at that February 24th council. So that is my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Starbaum. Just a couple of technical clarifications before we allow the applicant to speak. Condition number, sorry, I lost it. Condition number 4 lists the parking spaces, I think as a typo, listing a maximum of approximately 216 parking spaces. Development data block says 116 on the plans. Is 116?
So the maximum parking counts are based on bedrooms and bedroom allocations. Based on what is submitted, that maximum should be 119. I'm wondering if that wasn't, I know that it's 216 for a different one. I'm wondering if that's not pulled, but that can be corrected to reflect what spaces they'll provide and what the maximum is. So we can make that change. And I know that the applicant is also prepared to add conditions that speak to the affordability and AMI thresholds.
Great. And then can you remind us the 2 technical modifications on sidewalk width? Where does I guess I had thought the 10-foot sidewalk width requirement lived within residential expansion or the expansion districts. So what triggers the requirement that needs to be modified?
That is one of those where it is certainly in expansion districts. Because this is still a conditional zoning, we are still going to ask that that is enumerated, that they are going to 5 feet. That was, we see this so rarely, but we decided it was to be on the safer side to have everything listed and put those there.
But so
but
a traditional.
It does also come
go ahead, sorry.
from the SSDM, there are standards in there.
I see, okay. But like a office district development wouldn't be expected to have 10-foot internal sidewalks?
It depends on what's being proposed. It's hard to say. There are instances in which there could be a 5-foot sidewalk in office. There are instances where they would require that 10-foot. So this is
Okay.
just to get everything above board and have staff and the applicant be clear about what they're providing so they can provide answers as to why they chose 5 instead of 10.
Understood. Other questions, clarifications from?
Thank you, Mr. Starbaum. I always appreciate your background at the beginning of kind of where this is coming from. Remind me, because I'm a little blank, for a level 2 project, is there a community or meeting or anything, or is that, yes, so?
Yes, so
Did anyone attend or anything of note happen?
I will let the applicant speak to that. That is something where for a number of reasons, staff does not attend those. We don't want to be seen as being for or against a project. We are happy to be a resource should they choose to call us, but that gives the neighbors and the applicant a chance to form a relationship, and if the city's there, that tends to get in the way of that. So the applicant can speak to what was said, but I do believe the neighborhood meeting registration and the notes which are required to be provided if they're going to move forward are a component of this packet.
Gotcha. That's my only question for right now. Thank you.
Other questions of staff from commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Starbaum. Would the applicant like to say a few words? And please introduce yourself at the mic.
Good evening. My name is Derek Allen. I'm with Allen, Stahl & Kilborn. I'm a land use attorney here in Asheville and represent the applicant here. I do have other members of the applicant team. I have Sam Weldon from Blue Ridge Atlantic, and I have Warren Sugg with Civil Design Concepts, who has been our engineer on this project. I'll be brief because, quite frankly, Sam took all my good speaking points. I wanted to follow up a little bit on this level 2 issue because it has come up, and there are other underlying zoning jurisdictions where this footprint issue does impede what I believe City Council and our city, your intention was in terms of providing this incentive for developers to be able to provide affordable housing or other incentives to do these developments and have them almost as of right. These footprint limitations were something that I think everybody missed, and as we go through and try to apply them, all of a sudden we have a 4,000 square foot footprint minimum, which is just it's a tiny thing anyway. It's kind of wild. So I would as we look at different kinds of ordinance amendments going forward, including these, it might be that a simple amendment that said something along the lines of, this is intended to override any other footprint type requirements inside of the individual zoning districts would resolve that issue, and we wouldn't have to go through this process for this project that clearly meets all the things that we're trying to be served. Sorry for that point, but I didn't want to hit that out there. Obviously, 100% affordable housing, this is a tax credit project. We are a little late to the game in putting in the condition because we were all just assuming that this was known that a tax credit project is 100% affordable housing. So we've gone back and borrowed language that we used on the last MHO project, and I'll pass this around. Actually, let me pass it around first.
I've seen it, yeah. Thank you.
And real simply, what this does is recite what the city's affordable housing parts are, and says all units 100% shall be leased to households earning less than 80% of the area median income for Asheville, North Carolina, as established by HUD. The minimum affordability period for all units shall be 30 years and shall commence on the date of issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the property. All of the affordable units will also accept, but are not restricted to, HUD Housing Choice vouchers. Prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy for the property, the developer shall record a declaration of restrictions setting forth the affordability terms, which shall become effective upon the execution and recording thereof. The affordability terms must be met as evidenced by the North Carolina Finance Agency's Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, qualified occupancy of all units in the development. The LIHTC application process is much more involved than that, and I can let Mr. Weldon answer any questions that you might have. We didn't think it was appropriate for a condition here, but we did want to let the world know and the public know that this is 100% affordable housing that will meet at least these minimum requirements that our city has set for recognized affordable housing programs. Mr. Weldon, I would like for you to come up. In terms of the neighbor meeting, Mr. Weldon's had detailed communications with Andrea Golden at part of the Potter Emma neighborhood, and I want Mr. Weldon to at least address those. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name's Sam Weldon, with Blue Ridge Atlantic. Thanks, Derek. We've had, I guess, it's been 3 months now of great continuing ongoing discussions with Andrea and her team and the whole Potter Emma Neighborhood Association. I was actually over at their headquarters in West Asheville near the site earlier before this meeting. And we are working together as a group in a community, which is ultimately what we want to be as a good neighbor. The conditions here are, standard. We obviously can touch more on the affordability if we need to. The NCHFA application has been submitted as of 2 weeks ago. The AMI brackets will be at 30, 50, 60, and 70% AMI to get more in the weeds. But yeah, we are looking forward to working with Andrea and her team on some more, in-depth discussions as well as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Weldon. Any questions of the applicant, or do you have more, Mr. Allen?
I don't have any more. If there are questions about the site plan or any of the engineering aspects, Mr. Sugg is here to answer those questions. But I think this one's pretty straightforward, and we hope to bring 89 units of affordable housing. And the 80%, again, just hitting that, that's just the threshold for the condition. Obviously, as set out by Mr. Weldon's comments, it's much more deeply affordable than that, down to 30% with the number of those units.
Do we know the percentages on those?
We have the breakdown. I can provide this to you. We've sent this in if you'd like to see it. This is from the application itself.
So I guess I got two questions, one for you, Mr. Allen. I guess I don't understand why are we not just making the condition what these are? Why are we doing it 80% if it's gonna be less?
Well, that needs to be approved, and there's a
Okay.
world where that doesn't get approved and the project goes through, and then
You're
we
s-
have a project that we can't use anywhere else,
Okay, gotcha,
or for another developer.
gotcha. And I got a second question, but I'll let Ms. Bell follow up if you had anything else.
Not on that. I'll keep thinking.
My second question is probably directed to Mr. Sugg. So, the closest bus stop looked like it was, when I was there, was right across the road in front of the Church of Nazarene, right there on the corner was the bus stop. So my only thought was, being out there, if we have this population of hopefully bus riders across the street, putting in a striped walk or something to get across that. I mean, I'm not saying, is there any talk or look into that?
Yeah, Warren Sugg, Civil Design Concepts. So, yeah, I mean, we certainly have those sidewalks that are along our edges. For the most part, there's not a whole lot of sidewalk anywhere close by outside of those. We haven't had any discussions of crosswalks or anything like DOT, because Hazel Mill would be DOT, and I believe that North Louisiana is as well. I think both of those are. Actually, Hazel Mill is City of Asheville. North Louisiana has a state. So we could certainly talk to transportation locally or with DOT and see if that's something that's available. They would probably want it to be at the stoplight and not mid-block or something like that.
Yeah, I wasn't, because I was the other ones way down the street near the abandoned Kmart, and so I was thinking, well, the closest one's at the church, not a new stop walk, but just something at the light.
Right.
Drawing drivers' attention to the fact that hopefully, if there's 89 units, some of those people will be using that bus stop.
Right.
Right there.
Yeah, and I would hope that, I would definitely hope that the sidewalks that are being proposed here definitely helps clean up that area a lot,
Sure.
makes it a lot more safer. I was actually the one that put out the signs for the neighborhood meeting and recognized that, there's a lot of traffic going through there that don't have a lot of room. So hopefully these improvements will get folks to have a dedicated area to walk that's further away from that travel lane
Sure.
and to congregate.
Yeah, just to follow up, I appreciate that, because that was a comment that I had as well, with that bus stop being right there in the corner. And there actually is a sidewalk on that side of the road, on North Louisiana, on the west side, that goes all the way down.
But it breaks actually before it gets all the way down.
Yeah.
There's a section where there's no sidewalk.
At the Kmart, like just above.
Just off page there? Okay. So, I mean, I think a crosswalk would be helpful if those discussions could happen. I'm sorry, did you have more?
No, that
Oh,
was
okay.
my last comment.
Yeah,
for
so
the
just
developer.
in general, it's the non-vehicular circulation that's drawing my eye for this project. I think this is a great project. A comment that I have is, any residents living in the north part of this building, how do they get to the pavilion, the grill, the playground? It just appears that vehicular circulation takes priority, and then the secondary circulation, the non-vehicular circulation, it seems like, you'd have to travel down on that 5-foot sidewalk all the way down to the very south of the building, and then cross 2 crosswalks to get over to any amenity for the residents. And I'm wondering if I know that there's a wall on the, looks like to be on the east side of the property in addition to that buffer there, so dropping a sidewalk there is probably a challenge. Is there a way to break mid-parking lot to bring people over sooner? I don't know, but I just wanted to point that out, that, I appreciate with this parking lot being just over 1 space per unit, that makes a lot of sense, because there's gonna be a lot of people in here that are probably gonna use the bus stop, and so that's what drew my eye, was the non-vehicular circulation of the site.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying on the right-hand side, the east side. So we do have the grade change, which is quite a bit left to right, and even more so north to south. So we do have a small wall there. It's about a 4-foot high wall, so not large, but it is a wall. There's a landscape buffer there that we're trying to definitely encourage and keep as much as we can. We also have the 26-foot wide drive aisle that we need for fire protection. So we're pretty crunched given the setback on our North Louisiana side, the building, the grade change that we need to make once we get to the east side of the building, get to the sidewalk that we are showing, the parking lot itself having a reasonable slope, and then getting over there to the east. As you mentioned, we do have the internal sidewalk that gets someone all the way down to the green area, to the picnic shelter, all that. So they do have a route, and the folks that are in the north of the building or all sides of the building, they do have accessibility within the building itself to hit that sidewalk condition. But I see what you're saying is, hey, is there some way that somebody on the northeastmost corner of the parking lot could choose to go basically straight south as opposed to going, 50, 60 feet to the west and then south? So,
You know, and it's more than just like having an accessible route. It's more about pedestrian experience, right? And so, you have an entrance to the building on that south side of that building with some islands in the parking lot. They're coming out. They could see across the parking lot their playground that they want to get to with their kids, but they then have to travel south to the very edge of the building before crossing the crosswalks.
right.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying, I get the way that it's configured now, that it's a challenge to work it back in. But from the front end, I'm thinking in the future with these projects moving forward, projects that maybe aren't affordable, so that this is definitely something that I look at as pedestrian and circulation within the sites.
Mr. Sugg, can you confirm the number of parking spaces, just as we're trying to clarify that condition?
116 spaces. That's in our data block there. So 89 units, 116 parking spaces.
One thing that I've flagged on other projects is the condition reads a maximum of approximately, and I don't know how you maximum an approximation. So can we establish a hard maximum both for building height and parking space, or is that, I guess that's a question for the applicant and staff.
I'll say that we're lucky enough that we get to do a lot of these through the city, and we need to try to narrow these things down as much as we can, but there needs to be just a wee bit of flexibility so that we don't have to come see you all again and city council again and that kind of thing. So I think that's where it's built in. I'll let staff definitely talk through what's available. I mean, what we have on the plans is what we're planning on doing, but when we get into construction drawings, if something happened and it ended up being 115 spaces or 117 spaces or thereabouts, we don't want to get hammered where we need to come back to see you.
Yeah, and I think that the maximum should allow that flexibility. You can always go lower. So the maximum that you would need, yeah, exactly. And I think, one example is as you go through the process with the Housing Finance Agency, given the location of the amenities and the compactor, they may require an accessible parking space down there, so then you're going to lose a parking space. So I understand that requiring an exact number of spaces is not ideal, but a maximum seems like we should be able to do.
Yes, I will comment a couple things to this. And first, the applicant is willing to do the maximum allowed, again, which is 179. So if you want to amend what is in the project conditions to say that this will not exceed the UDO allowed 179 spaces, that's okay. But I will say that this is where we need to be careful about this being both an art and a science in policymaking. Haw Creek is an example of this. Because there was such specificity and conditions, that's one of the many reasons why it came back. So we are trying to allow some flexibility. A good example, while you can certainly quantify height, which in our UDO is defined as where the fire department enters to the highest occupied floor, that's a little challenge once you get into grading, once you set footers, once you set concrete, things like that. So if you miss that by an inch, then there's a bigger issue there. So there has to be some, it is a challenge that, Chris, Will, Director Munson-Dahl, and myself are in conversation about, especially after the most recent slew of CZs where everyone was bickering over about 3 words and has since led to major amendments. But it is something that I think we'll see changes in the future. But for now, we do have to do this way, just for specificity.
Understood, and I think, my preference would be if it's maximum approximate of 116 or a maximum of 179, we'll take the maximum approximate of 116, or I would, argue for that. I do think it is something we need to continually look at because, the conditional zoning approval and the site plan is a contract between the city, the applicant, and the public. And so when, neighbors are looking and seeing something that differs from what they remember getting approved, we need to have some explanation for that and some defensibility if, say, a developer, an applicant wanted to say, well, 200 is approximately 116. Where do we draw the line of what is approximate? So understood for this one, I'm comfortable with the language. I just think it's something we got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'll suggest that we, go ahead, Sam, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I was not offering my answer to be competitive. Staff certainly agrees with you, and this is something we're working on. The UDO is not just zoning regulations, it is also processes. Those are threshold amendments, those are 778, what a conditional zoning is. And as we're doing updates, that's maybe something we can provide as a little
Constantly
teaser.
refining the process and the products you all see. I will suggest we might massage this condition a little bit. I think some other staff had some issues with the word approximate, which I think was my suggestion, so I'll take the fall for that. So we can probably massage that word out. The next project you'll consider, we just had the blanket. It will comply with the parking requirements. The site plan to some degree does control for overage of the maximum, where if they added like one little tiny bay of 5 spaces, it would still be compatible with the site plan. If they wanted to add a whole nother parking space with 100 more spaces, then they're obviously not going to be compliant with the site plan. So we do have some assurance with the site plan being attached to the ordinance. I think we kind of go around on this. We've kind of debated different ways of doing this. What's the least worst way of trying to nail this jello to the wall? So anyway, that's an option too, is just have it read to, like Sam said, the maximum per the UDO, and then the site plan will keep it within bounds.
You could ask the applicant as well. I know Mr. Allen has done a lot of these conditions, and you want to, if you're limiting the parking to well below the max, that's a plus, usually a state for your development. But legally, in the past, when I've read conditions, I would have normally said approximately this doesn't make sense, because that can be arbitrary, as you said. At some point, somebody could say, I did want to go up to. So if there's something you'd be comfortable 10, 20% more that you think you could fit, then it would probably be better to see a max of something, but probably less than the maximum. I don't know, Mr. Allen, or if you want to discuss it.
And while there's deliberation going on, I will note, I appreciate the applicant's willingness to go below the NCHFA stated parking requirement, which is 1.75 parking spaces per unit, which, as we all know, is way higher than necessary. So there is an added process the developer has to go to request less than 1.75, and I really appreciate in this instance that they took the trouble to do that, because we oftentimes see tax credit developments come through that are far overparked. So I do appreciate that effort.
For this condition, let's just put the 10% and we'll put it up or down. So we'll say the number of parking places will be between 104 and 128. So
It's
we're
better. We've done that kind of thing before, because then
And
you have a
that gives us that
range.
flexibility. And, a couple things. One is the site plan controls a lot of this, and so we can't come in and do anything according to condition 15 that's wildly outside of the site plan. And, we run into the same issue. I know that Commissioner Cycles brought this up, and we've been discussing it for years, where we put things in as a team that are already in the development ordinance, and they go in as conditions, and they look like something that you're having to do, even though it's already required in the ordinance, and it causes, at best, it's duplicative. At worst, it causes confusion later on. So that's something that I know that we've been talking about for a while, and hopefully we'll start to cycle those out so that when we are looking at conditions, instead of 17, we've got 7, and we're really looking at the meat of what we're asking to do. Like we're making a variance from a technical modification from a height requirement or a setback requirement. So that's my 2 cents.
Mr. Allen, could you state the range that you were comfortable building in on the parking?
Sure. The project will include between 104 and 128 parking spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions of the applicant before we open the public hearing or public comment?
Can you speak to any concerns that came up in neighborhood meetings or engagement with the community or any adjacent uses or adjacent residents?
So I conducted and sent out the notices and everything for the first neighborhood meeting. We were able to have that just across the street in on Hazel Mill Road in the church parking lot. And it was well attended by a lot of the community, not only the ones that were noticed, but even further reaching. The news coverage was there. We did have it bilingual because we knew that there would be a strong contingent of folks who needed that. We went through our normal thing, which is to show the plans, to talk through the process, and then we went one by one and asked questions, answered questions, a large majority of which we summarized and put into the record as part of the submittal, but a lot of it was based around affordability, around what it's going to look and feel like, the process, where we are in the process. There was a lot of conversation about traffic in general. I'm gonna say the speed of traffic. There's already too much traffic. How much more traffic is this going to be? We don't like that people cut through somewhere else. Those kinds of meetings normally get a lot of discussion on traffic because everybody experiences traffic. So that was a large part of it. And then I think those were the main points. There was probably a few questions regarding things like stormwater. I don't remember that being one of the bigger topics. There was discussions on the sidewalk, whether we were putting in sidewalks or not, and the danger of that. Did I miss anything that was a kind of a summary, big picture item? And then I'll let Sam speak to his follow-ups because he's had several of those that have been a little more specific in their intent.
I mean, I think just short of what Warren said has more been with Andrea and her team, a lot of incorporating local community efforts, which we plan to do. There's some property management related items, stuff like that, training, Section 3 opportunities, a lot of triggers, Davis-Bacon, stuff like that we're going to be required to do. So, I mean, I don't think I'm missing anything. I think that's it. Maybe Andrea can talk a little more if I'm missing one, but yeah, so.
Thank you.
I wanted to follow up on the rationale for the decision to make the sidewalks more narrow externally from 10 feet to 5 feet.
Yeah, so from my perspective, anytime I can get folks further away from the travel lane, the better. There's also a drainage component that comes into, this is not a section where there's curb and gutter. It's for the most part, it's just pavement up against dirt. Sometimes there's ditches, sometimes there's not. So that's the main thing. And 10-foot sidewalk here would be a bit out of place, in my opinion. There are definitely places for 10-foot sidewalks. There again, it encourages people to be very much up on the travel lane. I don't love that in this case, and it's a little more added impervious if we had to talk about that as well.
Okay. I would say that this parcel's leading into an urban center, and so then it does have direct access to other bus stops. I think that, in my personal opinion, I think that having a 10-foot sidewalk that allows more than one person to stand laterally next to each other does make some sense. I understand your perspective on the drainage and trying to keep folks away from the travel lane, but I think the sidewalk on the other side of the street's at 6 feet. And if we could get just 5 feet's very narrow. That would be my preference, to just have like a wider sidewalk in an area that's intended and planned to be a district where we're trying to get people to walk to more things.
Any response or wiggle room on sidewalk width, or you feel like 5 feet is the extent that you can do on this site?
I mean, if 6 feet's good, I mean, I don't have a reason to make it not 5 and 6, but I would certainly like to work with transportation and NCDOT and staff to decide if that's appropriate, more than me just say yes.
What's the width of the buffer right now between the
5 foot.
sidewalk?
5 foot green space, 5 foot sidewalk.
Okay, so we'd be cutting into that green space
Yes.
to achieve it.
So
Okay.
you probably end up with more like a 4 and 6 or whatever number. And
Could you not do the 1 foot towards the building?
potentially, there may be that as well. That's why I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that would be preferable, because I think the 5 foot green space is ASHTO standards without a curb.
Sam, what's that?
No.
So I know we don't have, transportation here or traffic. I don't know if you guys can speak to this particular corridor. I know sometimes I hear Chris Carnes mention that certain areas are meant to be a 5 and 5, and some areas are meant to be 10. I really don't know off the top of my head what this one is designated as.
I don't know either. We don't really have a way of pulling that up. I know in the past, transportation's been relatively receptive to increasing it to 6 feet. I think preserving the 5 foot wide planting utility strip is an important component. So I don't think we want to sacrifice that. It could be if it's a condition of approval, maybe subject to approval by city transportation staff, just in case there's any major concerns. They don't have to come back for a modification later. But it is something we do see somewhat regularly, the 6 foot wide sidewalk, to have a little extra path, and if there's any obstacles in the sidewalk, it allows for that clear space to be maintained, so, yeah.
I mean, I completely agree. 6 feet is kind of the minimum you want to go, in my opinion, for a situation where you may be experiencing pedestrian circulation on a somewhat regular basis. You got someone going to the bus stop, you got someone coming from the bus stop, they're going to have to pass each other, and 5 feet's just not sufficient. I like the idea of the condition being contingent upon traffic approval.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I was going to add is this is precisely why we have that final TRC meeting, is to reconcile all the legislative sausage making with those UDO standards, and this gives transportation the opportunity to provide for that. So staff feels that is appropriate if the applicant will agree to it.
Something to clarify, so is there a curb proposed on North Louisiana Avenue? Because I'm seeing that the road pitches back towards the site, and so I'm wondering how you're going to prevent drainage from the road getting
Yeah, so
onto the
currently there is
sidewalk.
not curb that's being proposed on the NCDOT's North Louisiana. So no, there's not.
Because it seems like there might be a lot of flow coming over from the road at that point, and without a ditch.
Could be
Something.
Could be something we have to put in a ditch in that 5 foot green space. Hopefully we don't get to a point where we have to take that drainage and try to get on the back side of the sidewalk. But there could be a
Yeah.
curb that we'd have to negotiate with DOT. They would want a 30-inch curb and gutter as their DOT road, which would then bring in pipes, boxes, and we'd need to find an outlet place to either connect or dissipate that too. So it does start to unravel quite a bit.
So in the final TRC, that'll be ironed out.
Yeah, right now I'd like to keep it
Just-
the way it is, but yeah, that's
Sure,
something
sure.
we can iron out.
Just to kind of circle back to the sidewalk, is there willingness by the applicant to explore the feasibility of 6 feet, subject to traffic engineer approval.
Yeah, and I was just talking to Sam, I'd like to not put it in as a condition, but maybe as part of your recommendation.
recommendation.
And we're happy to look at that. I mean, we want to make sure we have that 5 feet, and if we can push it closer to the building, then we'll do it that way. But Warren can run that down with the smart folks.
I just had a clarification about the affordable housing. I think you said that is what you're doing, but you didn't want to add it as a condition, or did I get that wrong?
We're adding in a condition, and the condition we're adding is far below what we're going to do as part of the LIHTC
No,
program.
but the condition you handed out, you tonight would be agreeing to
We're-
add all units 100%, 80% and below, with the understanding it'll be deeper, more deeply affordable.
We're intending to add that in as a condition,
Okay.
yes.
That's what I wasn't clear on. And not to get into the weeds, but the only thing I wanted to be sure, so usually the city writes, we write our deed restriction, we give it to you guys. I know that the Housing Finance Agency also has a deed restriction. On this last sentence, I don't even know if you need this whole thing about affordability terms in the Housing Finance Agency, unless I'm misunderstanding. Did you only want to do the deed restriction that the Housing Finance Agency is?
No, we literally just cut and pasted that from
Okay.
the MHO one that came through as a CZ a couple months ago.
Okay, so we can finalize the specifics, but this is the general condition that you will do the deed restriction like we normally do. Okay.
Yes.
I had a question about the affordability component as well.
Okay.
I was curious if you off the top of your head have an idea of what the proportion of like bedrooms are for each of the affordable
We do.
brackets are.
I don't have that memorized off the top of my head, but that should address your question there. Yeah.
You could even just read it, just general understanding that it's not final, but that's what's proposed. Thank you. And you could read it out so the audience knows what the topic is.
Yeah, so right now, we've got, as you see, the 1, 2s, and 3s breakdown, gives you the numbers, and then it gives you the applicable LIHTC AMI percentage. Sort of pretty straightforward, but that's where we're at.
Thank you. Any other questions before we open for public comment?
I'll just make a comment that I appreciate all the back and forth with the neighborhood. I'm looking forward to hearing public comment from the neighborhood, but this is wonderful to see this kind of interaction and the back and forth, and I appreciate adding the affordability restrictions into the conditions as well.
Great. And with that, we will open for public comment at 6:21. As a reminder, please come to the mic. You have 3 minutes to speak on behalf of yourself, or 10 minutes if you're representing a group. Please state your name into the mic. Anyone wish to speak for public comment?
Hi, everyone. My name's Andrea. I live in the Emma community. I'm here with Rocio and Jessica, and we chair the Emma Neighborhood Council. Before I express our support of this project, I did just want to very respectfully add some information to staff's presentation. We would not consider this area West Central Asheville. It's called the Emma Neighborhood. It is not an urban center. It was removed from the urban center work because we recognize that it's an area that needs protection against displacement. We do hope that in the future, as staff brings recommendations about development and its relationship to alignment to things like the comp plan, that you please take into account neighborhood plans, particularly within the legacy neighborhoods. I will say we were kind of disappointed to not hear that in the staff presentation. However, we fully support this project, and I want to share a little bit. I did go to the public community meeting, and we heard concerns from the neighbors that are kind of adjacent to where the development is being proposed. Kind of the concerns that were mentioned, like traffic, increased density. There was also a lot of neighborhood conversation just about kind of the change to the nature of our community. Emma is a semi-rural community. We are mostly mobile home parks. A lot of us keep chickens, goats, cows. grow our food. And so there is, I will just name, there's a sadness in the community to see it turn towards more of an urban development. And our neighborhood council grappled with that and had a lot of discussion about it. At the same time, some of our most important housing includes apartment developments like the Woodridge Apartments, where so many of our families live. And so ultimately, for our community, because of the level of affordability, our neighborhood council landed on that it is in alignment with our ultimate goals, which are to provide deeply affordable housing that's in alignment with our neighborhood median income. And we just don't see a lot of projects like that. So we're really, really excited about this project. We worked really closely with Sam and his team over the past 3 months to come to a series of agreements and commitments that we'll be working together, and would really love to see a community benefit agreement. The Emma community, like a lot of the legacy neighborhoods, have had previous really negative experiences with developers. The Emma community just went through an atrocious experience with the developer at 815 Emma Road, which was with Buncombe County, where a lot of trust was broken about the way that developers came in. But Sam really came in and worked really, really hard to rebuild that trust and showed up to answer a lot of questions, has put commitments in writing. And so we're really excited and hopeful to share this as an example of the way that new housing can come into communities that have an extreme concern around displacement and really bring that housing in a way that ensures that current residents, our children who would love to stay in the community and are currently being faced with the decision of having to leave because there's nowhere to go. And we want to see more development like this, and so we are in support. And when I say we, I would like to say I speak for the neighborhood council. There are about 50 neighbors that came together and over a 3-month period engaged in debate and dialogue, and ultimately had a neighborhood vote where we came to consensus to bring and express our support. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Would anybody else like to speak for public comment? Seeing none, we will close the public comment at 6:25. I appreciate your thorough engagement on this project, and wanted to actually revisit the comment that you started with around urban centers. I did see that noted in the staff report, and maybe staff could provide a clarification. While the Kmart site was removed from the urban place rezoning as part of the broader urban centers initiative, how is this site characterized within the comp plan? I think there's a reference that this is an urban center, and it's my belief, but I don't have the comp plan right in front of me, that the urban centers is a sort of more broader land use categorization outside of the specific urban place rezoning that was ultimately pulled back. Is that?
Yes, there are a couple of things here, and I will go to this slide. First and foremost, I would like to both formally recognize and also apologize to Poder Emma and Andrea. I have that in my notes. It has been a long day, and I just totally, because it's in the presentation, it slipped my mind. Yes, this is in Poder Emma, that is part of the city of Asheville. This is a challenge because there are, as Will was trying to get to, there are the future land use designations that are urban centers, but there is also a more broad element which talks about transit supportive corridors, and there's a preferred growth scenario in the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, and it does have a star and kind of a circle which shows a broader area. Now, where this is a difficult thing, because where does a transit supportive corridor end and where does an urban center begin? Now, the actual future land use designation has strict boundaries, but it is harder and less defined to say where that transit supportive corridor and that preferred growth scenario urban center ends, because it is just sort of a radius in that map that is shown in Living Asheville.
Thank you
So
for that.
Yeah, there is a distinction between those two. So it is not the future land use designation that's traditional neighborhood, which is different, but it is still
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the clarification there. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
No, I mean, I think I really like all the work the development team's done. I'm glad that they've been interactive with the Emma community there, and I'm glad that the Emma community showed up. I just think there's a lot of pros to this project, and I'm prepared to make a motion if there's no other comments.
As a recap, there were a few revisions to the project conditions that we contemplated. Do you want me to summarize what we talked about, or?
Make the motion,
No, no.
if you got it all written down.
Just to summarize what we talked about in case I'm forgetting something, a modification of condition number 4 around the parking spaces to include a range of 104 to 128 parking spaces. The addition of the affordable housing condition as presented and written, and a recommendation for consideration of a 6-foot sidewalk in coordination with city transportation staff. Those were the 3 I noted. Anything else?
Was the 6-foot sidewalk just on the outer, along the road, or is it internal?
Good clarification. My understanding was external, but yeah.
External.
No other comments?
Sorry to be a stickler, but I have to write this in the morning. When you say external, you are referencing both North Louisiana and Hazel Mill, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Here we go. I move to approve conditional zoning request for property located at 383 North Louisiana Avenue from Office 1 to Office Conditional Zoning, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and meets the development needs of the community, and that the request, 1, provides infill development in targeted growth areas, 2, increases the supply of housing in proximity to schools, transit, and parks, and 3, rezones property to transit supportive density in nodal clusters along or near transit corridors, with the conditions that all units shall be leased at 80% AMI, at least 80% AMI, and the other affordability conditions as presented by the development team, and that the parking spaces be within a range of 104 to 128 spaces, with as well the recommendation that a 6-foot external sidewalk is considered between the development team, staff, and city traffic, what are they called? Transportation. I believe that was it.
How'd we do? All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Best of luck and welcome to Emma. Next up, we have item number 6 on our agenda, a request to conditionally rezone the property located at 230 Sardis Road from industrial to residential expansion conditional zone. The property PIN is identified on the agenda. Property owner is Enplas America, Inc. Applicant's contact is Mr. Warren Sugg. Planner coordinating review is Will Palmquist. Mr. Palmquist.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Will Palmquist with Planning Urban Design. I will be presenting this conditional zoning request for the project known as 230 Sardis Apartments at 230 Sardis Road. Just the quick facts, this is a level 3 conditional zoning. This is due to the project proposing 50 or more residential units, so it's a request to rezone from industrial to residential expansion. It's proposing 180-unit multifamily development on 9.19 acres, and staff is recommending approval. So here you can see the kind of zoomed out regional view of the site, and then the close-in view. You can see along Sardis Road, which is in western Asheville, the existing land uses there are kind of a variety of residential, commercial, and light industrial type uses. This property is right along the city boundary, so the county is just to the south. You can see the existing Graymont Village apartments just to the southwest of the project site. As mentioned, the site is 9.19 acres. It is currently used for a plastic manufacturer warehousing space. So here you can see the existing zoning of industrial and the proposed residential expansion, conditional zoning request. As far as the city zoning goes, and we'll look at the county zoning a little bit on a future slide, you can see the surrounding zoning for the area is a combination of industrial and commercial industrial. There's also a residential expansion conditional zoning just on the north side of Sardis Road in this very oddly shaped parcel. That was for a 300-unit project approved in 2022. It's not yet built, but that is a potential project that would have a similar kind of development style and pattern as what's being proposed this evening. So here's the site plan of what's proposed. As mentioned, it is a 180-unit multifamily development project. The building height is 4 to 5 acres, 4 to 5 stories in height. That's kind of to take advantage of the topography that slopes up from Sardis Road and Graymont Lane. You can see there is parking lot with 216 parking spaces total, which is within the max and minimum of 360 and 180 spaces respectively. Some other site amenities include a pool, an amenity area, a playground, I think a dog park as well. You can see sidewalks are proposed. They are proposed at 5 feet in width along Graymont Lane, which is a privately maintained roadway, and then 6 feet in width along Sardis Road, which is an NCDOT maintained roadway. Landscaping plan has all the required elements. There are street trees proposed, large ones along Graymont Lane where there are no overhead utilities, and then small maturing trees on Sardis Road where there are overhead utilities present, so shorter trees are required. Other landscaping includes parking lot, parking lot and building impact landscaping as well. And then the tree canopy preservation area shown here along the eastern and south and western property boundaries, which that is being proposed to be met through preservation of existing canopy. And then the elevation drawings, you can see how, looking from the side of the building on the bottom elevations, that the building is kind of set into the topography to be 5 stories facing outward and then 4 stories inward. Kind of a prototypical multifamily development type design. Some different materials being proposed, balconies, and then kind of these different bays, trying to giving some rhythm and breaking up the overall mass of the building itself. So as far as project conditions go, you'll see, and this was just updated today actually, that the project conditions have been tweaked a little bit regarding parking and height. Those just reference the UDO sections that mention and require the maximums there. The project is compliant with the overall height and the parking. And as mentioned, the site plan is included as conditional zoning, so that cannot deviate significantly from if and when that's approved. There are 2 technical modifications to zoning requirements that are being requested, one of which is regarding sidewalk width. The residential expansion district does require 10-foot wide sidewalks externally and internally. The applicant's requesting a modification of that to a 6-foot wide sidewalk on Sardis Road, which again is that NCDOT main roadway, 5 feet wide on Graymont Lane, which is the privately maintained roadway, and then 5 feet wide internally. There is also a request to modify the street tree requirements. There is a language that allows for a maximum planting distance of 20 feet from the edge of pavement. And due to the NCDOT right-of-way being really wide in this section, and the applicant kind of desiring to plant on their property and not really have to go through the, I'm not exactly sure the rationale or what, but I know NCDOT can be very particular when it comes to the right-of-way and what can be planted in them. So this will ensure that the trees can be planted and maintained by the project and therefore they're requesting a distance from the edge of pavement more than 20 feet, which kind of varies depending on the site location, between 30 and 40 feet maximum. So looking through the criteria that staff evaluates for conditional zoning requests, and this is a larger zoomed out view of the zoning map that includes both the city and the county zoning. As mentioned, you can see the industrial, which is this darker purple color, the commercial industrial in this lighter purple, the residential expansion project across the street from the proposed site, some multifamily residential and single-family residential zoning to the east, and then the majority of the zoning to the south of the project site is R3 in Buncombe County, which is a zoning district that allows for single-family and multifamily development, and that's where that Gray Mountain Village project is located again. Staff finds the proposal to be consistent and compatible with that surrounding zoning. Regarding the future land use, as designated in the city's comprehensive plan, it's currently industrial manufacturing. Now, this future land use is mainly centered around those types of uses. There is some mention of housing that could support workers and be associated with major industrial manufacturing uses. However, staff does recommend an amendment to that future land use to that residential neighborhood. That's a more appropriate category that would support this project. That is actually what took place for that conditional zoning to the north, referenced earlier, which was previously industrial manufacturing and was amended to residential neighborhoods. So staff feels that's a consistent kind of regulatory update that will help support this project in regards to the comprehensive plan. So staff finds that the future land use designation as proposed, being residential neighborhood, is compatible with the proposed development that includes a variety of housing types, including apartment complexes, that these neighborhoods can benefit from having more housing diversity over time. Looking at the infrastructure of the existing area, there is existing roadway in place. That is the NCDOT roadway on Sardis and the privately maintained roadway on Graymont Lane. There is limited bike and pedestrian networks in the area. The proposed sidewalk will add to that and be really the only pedestrian facility in the immediate vicinity. There is not a bus route or bus stops along Sardis Road. The project received a letter of commitment for water service and a wastewater allocation approval by MSD. And then more detailed stormwater review and approval is pending the conditional zoning approval that would happen at final TRC. But overall, the project is supported by infrastructure. And then finally, looking at the comprehensive plan, staff finds that the project does support a number of goals in the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan to encourage responsible growth by prioritizing greater density development overall throughout the city as appropriate, increasing and diversifying the housing supply by increasing the rental housing supply, and making streets more walkable, comfortable, and connected by eliminating gaps in the citywide sidewalk network. For those reasons, staff recommends approval of the proposed conditional zoning request. Here's just an overall timeline of the project. It was approved with conditions with revisions required at the January 5th TRC meeting. Getting to a question we had earlier about kind of the TRC and how that process flows. The applicant did make revisions to the plans following the TRC to address planning's comments that were pertinent to the conditional zoning review. There are still a number of comments you'll see on there that are very technical, and those would be addressed at the final TRC review when the project has the more detailed development plan finalized. It's before you this evening, and then has a tentative city council hearing date of February 24th. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Palmquist. Any questions of staff?
I'll just jump in to basically follow up on your last comment. You had a note in the TRC report for the applicant to provide any information on affordable housing commitments, renewable energy, and innovative stormwater management techniques. Was there any follow-up after that request?
No, I'm not aware of any of those components being included or guaranteed with the project.
Any other questions of staff?
I just wanted to clarify, I think you mentioned it was compatible with future land use, but that's essentially if the future land use map were to be amended. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you could make the argument that to some degree, the industrial manufacturing would support housing, but it's really more housing specific to an industrial kind of use. So that's why staff is recommending that change in the future land use category and then finds that to be compatible with that. So it's a little bit of a circular argument in that regard. But it's something that does happen. And we recommend from time to time to have the future land use be, I guess, more responsive to trends in areas of the city and reflective of projects like this that, help with the compatibility of the land use and kind of signals that, if we have kind of this patchwork land use, maybe a more comprehensive look of the future land use network in this area is warranted. So on occasion, this is a recommended approach, and then that kind of, if the project is approved, and it should be in the motion to recommend approval of the zoning change and the future land use change together, and then that would carry to city council, and if city council approves it, then that future land use map is updated.
Okay. And we discussed this a little bit at the meeting prior to this meeting, but just to state it here as well, I think it would be really helpful for us to be able to see, or at least I'm interested in seeing a broader analysis about industrial land that's been identified in the future land use map of, how much of that is still available as an industrial use under current zoning regulations. So yeah, if that's something we can follow up on in the future, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too difficult to pull together. We can probably get even something for next meeting. We could look at both the future land use and the zoning change. They should kind of line up for the most part, but there might be some overlap. Definitely something that, as we get into the comprehensive plan update project, I think taking a harder look at some of the future land use designations in some areas may be warranted. Maybe Sardis Road is one of those areas to focus in on a little bit more.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think it would be an interesting analysis to see, what remains for industrial use, as well as the patchwork that exists through kind of parcel by parcel transitions. If this is approved, we'll leave kind of a island of industrial to the east, which is a little bit strange. So that Sardis Road area definitely has seen some transition. Project across the street, this one, and I think a holistic view of Sardis Road and under the lens of what the future land use designations should be would be a really helpful exercise in the comp plan rewrite. Sorry, revision. Yeah. Any other questions of staff?
I think I just wanted to clarify that the project did not complete a traffic impact analysis, right?
Correct. The TRC report under the transportation comments does request a trip generation by the applicant. I don't believe that's been done yet, so that would be required to confirm at the final technical review. It's, from my understanding, it could be close, but the engineers have to provide kind of that detail based on number of bedrooms and trip generation numbers based on the handbook and that kind of thing.
So would that happen, just so I understand process, they would generate the trip evaluation prior to the final TRC?
Correct.
And if it was lower, they wouldn't have to provide a transportation or traffic impact analysis, but if it met the threshold, they would have to provide that also to get final TRC approval?
That's correct. And they'd
Okay.
have to perform any identified mitigation measures to maintain an acceptable level of service on roadways and intersections. Yes, sometimes you'll see projects have that analysis done already, and it can help inform the project and be a point of reference. A lot of times it's kind of after conditional zoning is approved and then get into the weeds. Sometimes we'll know for sure if a TIA is required or not. I think this one's maybe on the cusp and be based on number of bedrooms that maybe are not totally fleshed out at this point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess I do have a follow-up question on the affordability part. So you're making a recommendation that it is in alignment with the comprehensive plan because it increases housing supply. And I recognize that. I also have concerns that it ignores the diversify housing supply options, right? And so in the comp plan, there's two outcomes, one for the increase side, one for the diversify side, and there's metrics associated with each of those outcomes. This gets to a little bit of what we talked about at the retreat. Can you speak to how the city's been tracking that information and if there's been trends recently that show kind of where that diversify outcome is heading?
Yes, so there are metrics tracking outcomes of the comprehensive plan. I do not have that information readily available, and I know I've been working on updates as far as like a data update based on that implementation level. Don't know where that stands currently. That would definitely be something that we would do as part of this update to the comprehensive plan. I do not have that information ready this evening, but we definitely could get it for you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmquist. Would the applicant like to add any comments?
Sure, a couple. My name's Derek Allen, and I represent the applicant in this matter. And I have two of the representatives from the development group, Dennis Burton and Paul Smith, who came up from Greensboro in the back row. Warren Sugg is also the engineer on this project. One of the things I wanted to point out is on this comp plan, the future land use map and the comprehensive plan are always reacting to, or should always be reacting to what's happening on the ground. Here, the project is surrounded by multifamily and single-family detached dwellings, and that's just the reality. So on the ground, when we put our development beside it, it looks like an extension of the Graymont project that is already on the ground in multifamily. And in fact, our boundary is the Graymont entrance. So I think that's just a reaction and reflection of what's actually happened on the ground. In terms of providing affordable housing, we don't have the land use incentive grant anymore. We don't have any way to offset or subsidize affordable housing coming from an otherwise market rate project. We know, and articles show, and speakers talk about the fact that unsubsidized affordable housing mandates on market rate projects not effectively, end up acting as a tax on renters. The other renters in the project end up making for the lost rental income that needs to show for any lender to underwrite a project, and that's the way it works. The flip side of that is folks who are financing their projects with affordable housing tax credits or other incentives like that come in, and they do affordable housing, and that's what they do. And so I think it's a good balance tonight to be able to show that 100% affordable housing project can come and a market rate project can come, and we need them all. We know what the Bowen report says. We need 13,000 units in 5 years. That's a lot. It takes a long time to get a project through. Anecdotally, I can tell you a project that we worked on that was about 100 build-for-rent homes. It came through this body 5 years ago, and I saw an article on it this past 2 weeks ago talking about this project being built this year. And so that's 5 years from beginning of building and then another year or two to build it out. So it takes a while to get those, a long time to get those projects out. So that's the response on the affordable housing piece. I would like Warren to walk us through the site plan on this one. This is the bigger project than the last one. Warren, if you can walk us through the site plan and talk about that a little bit, I think that'd be helpful for the commission.
For the record, Warren Sugg, Civil Design Concepts. Pleasure to be here tonight. As mentioned, and please stop me at any point if you have a question, but the development is there at the corner of Greymont Lane and Sardis Road. One building, as shown by staff, it's sort of L-shaped, and you do get the more robust or higher levels on the street side, and then you get the parking lot side that's the lower, that's the 4-level side. When we were designing this, we were trying to push the parking, the less desirable to see item more to the back there and try to have the building be the thing that is seen. We are using the topo as best we can to use not only the split level building, but also you'll notice some dirt moving to try to come closer to balancing this site. We do have our main access off of Greymont Lane, which is the road that goes to the aforementioned apartments. It comes into the site. We've got our parking lot with a number of different walkways. We've got the dog park, the playground, some safe dispersal areas. You'll also see a maintenance building in the far right-hand side of the page, which is right beside the compactor, and some parking for that compactor. You'll see some of the amenities that are closer, clustered up near the building itself. We do have ADA spaces that are up near the building, as well as the one that's out by the compactor. We do have on-site storm collection that will be the impervious that's being proposed here. There is an existing building here and building parking lot, so we'll look at that pre and post, and it's shown in the data block. Water is available to us along Greymont Lane. There's also water, public water, that's out in Sardis. It's along Greymont Lane. It's where we make our connection for our meter and backflow preventer. Do have sanitary sewer, MSD, and as mentioned by staff, we've got those allocations from both groups to connect into public sewer. There is quite a bit of grade change. You can see on some of the sheets that we're making up here. We've got the landscape areas as well as the open space that are being utilized and meeting all the standards there. And I'm going to just kind of stop there and let y'all ask me questions, because that's probably the better way to get to the next part.
Thank you, Mr. Sugg.
Yep.
Any questions?
Okay, I have a number of questions. So it seems like there's a lot of earthwork on the site to make it happen. The contours that are to the south, the parallel contours where you're grading into the hillside, there's such a large amount of area between that hillside and the parking that seems like it's just a big flat area. Is that required because of the slope grade?
It's generating the dirt needed to push this building out towards the front. So effectively, your cut fill analysis, we're trying to produce some dirt. And it also makes for a much nicer, once completed, flatter area back there for recreation and just to be able to use.
And that'll be lawn?
Correct.
Some kind, okay. I mean, I think the trade-off is you lose a lot of trees back there. This site has, a nice forest, and we are losing a lot of that with this project. So just to point out that is a trade-off, and I mean, I imagine the cost of fill to bring it in is, a lot.
Significant.
Yeah. Okay, another question is,
Can I jump in
Oh,
just
yeah,
to
yeah.
piggyback off of that before I
Please.
forget? Sorry. So I guess I have similar thoughts, and to that point, if that back part is going to be flatter, right, then what's the thought about, I understand the green space thought, but I guess I'm thinking about what's the reasoning for not pushing the parking lot further back so that the building can sit further back and you can preserve some of that tree canopy on the L sides of the streets?
Well, there's also tree canopy on where the building is now, so we could do an analysis, decide which tree is better than another tree a little bit. And it's also just the intent of how this building is supposed to be presented, if you will. That's the marketing of it, is to have it up as close to the sort of road as we can. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
The other question is about stormwater. So I think you're taking advantage of the incentive to have less open space and do more stormwater treatment. Is that right? So what is the treatment level that you're able to achieve with this design?
So we have two StormTech C501. I don't know if you have those sheets. So that's where we've got both the StormTech shown. We actually have a third one that's down on the slope of Graymont Lane. So that's where it's going to be handled. We haven't gotten into full design yet of that, but we're going to meet all the city standards.
Okay. Can you just remind me of what that requirement is? Like, instead of treating the 10-year, it's the 25. I think that's correct.
No, I think when you're talking about the open space reduction, that has to do with if you weren't required to do stormwater. Well, we're required to do stormwater anyways because we are increasing impervious.
Okay. Yeah.
You're only intending to do the stormwater for as the site exists now, correct?
Correct.
So just the difference between what's there and what you're adding.
Nobody's asked me the question about the TIA for a minute. I wanted to clear up or talk about that for just a minute. So there is a traffic memo that I think is already in the record. If it's not, we can make sure it is. So we did have a traffic engineer who did the analysis of the units, and it does not trigger the 100 peak hour trips, which is the city's threshold for it. But we can finalize that as we go through it. But we have looked into it.
And I'll say from, well, I don't know if everyone had a chance to go by the site. When I went by, there is a short turnout into there. I don't know if I'm using the right word, but like, it goes from 2 lanes to 3 lanes, and there's a short little like turn lane in the middle getting from Sardis into Graymont. I just think to me, that's a good thing that, when I went to turn in, I'm not blocking all the traffic. It's only 2 or 3 cars deep, but there is a little bit of refuge there.
I had a similar concern with this one as I did with the last one, which is that the parking lot, that you have to travel through 6 bays of traffic to get to the playground. I noticed, the pool amenity is right next to the building, which is great, but then the playground is 6 bays of parking away from that. And I'm curious, I always try to imagine myself living there, right? Okay, let's say I want to chill in the cabana where there's some shade and want to watch my 3 kids be able to play on the playground. I would prefer it to be probably next to the playground, so I have grouped amenities for my development. And I am curious, noticing that, you have that grade for your cut fill analysis, you are pulling that grade back there. Is it possible to shift the parking up closer to the slope so that you could put more amenity closer to the building? So that, because I honestly, I don't want to go to that playground personally, because looking at the planting plan, there's not going to be any trees really to shade it out. I'm just going to be kind of standing there waiting for them to be done. And then be like, can we go back to the apartment?
I'd encourage you to get back to the pool where it's nice and fun.
Anyway, it's just the non-vehicular circulation of the site is again my concern with this one. It feels like the playground's just kind of stuck there on that, and I get you got. In typical uses, right, to me it makes sense to have the dog park over there because that's a whole different user. But the user who's using the pool and the playground, those tend to have overlapping uses.
Yeah, I definitely hear your point. I mean, one thought is to have that playground more where you've got more open space and the natural. I mean, but I totally hear what you're saying. I could hear someone debate, well, I don't want to be surrounded by the building, the parking, the pool, the cabana. I want to be more out there. So
Well, those are the Frisbee guys, right? The Frisbee guys are over there using the lawn. The parents with the kids, they want a little bit of shade. I mean, if you're gonna plant it up and if it's become a bigger thing, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but thank you, I totally hear your comment, thank you. Sorry, that's really loud.
Do you know if there's been any, like, environmental investigations regarding any, like, potential contamination from the existing use or anything like that?
So they can get in a lot more detail if they need to, but yeah, we've had phase 1, phase 2,
Okay.
all those kinds of things done.
Thanks.
You had a phase 2? So the phase 1 returned a need for a phase 2?
Yeah, phase 1, phase 2.
Sorry, could you come and speak into the mic? Yeah. And introduce yourself.
Yeah, Paul Smith with the developer, Carroll Companies. Yeah, we had phase 1 and phase 2. We had a short timeline with the contract to purchase, and so we knew the risk, and we just, because of the use, we thought the phase 1 would likely recommend the testing, so we went ahead and did those at the same time with ECS Environmental, and so we should have the lab results, but we'll manage through whatever, hopefully nothing. The smell test on
Fingers
site
crossed.
didn't yield anything, but you know, the actual labs will tell us, so.
Thank you.
I have a similar question based on, similar to the last project, is about the sidewalks that are on Graymont. Is there, are there particular reasons for the narrowing?
I was hoping you were gonna bring this up. As I was sitting back there, I was like, I really hope he asked me about sidewalks. So,
You're welcome.
So thank you. So along Graymont is a little bit different. Graymont already has curb and gutter there with some flumes and a permanent ditch system that gets that water going through there. So we want to utilize that in continual. So we would propose to continue to have that 5-foot sidewalk. And I think we actually showed 5 and 5. I saw on this, it said something about 6. Figured we would talk about that as well. So along Graymont, we are fighting with a bit the drainage that's naturally happening there today along Graymont Lane. We'd like to continue to have that. And we have a similar situation along Sardis Road where the NCDOT does not have curb and gutter, but it does have drainage that comes towards us, and there's a ditch system there. And that kind of segues into why we need, or why we're asking for those trees to be a little further away from the right-of-way line around a public or private property than you would normally see. Because what's happening is you've got a road, you've got some green shoulder, you've got a ditch. We're then trying to get back up, build a sidewalk, and then get to where those trees would be so that trees aren't planted in the sidewalk or in the ditch or on the shoulder, which DOT would have a lot of troubles with. And there's a lot of utilities along that strip. There's fiber optic, gas, all kinds of things that are also a conflict we don't want to put trees in the middle of.
So on Graymont, am I understanding correctly that the street trees that are there now will be removed?
There
Like
will
they're
be
fairly young street trees.
There will be some of those that will probably be affected by that sidewalk going in. There may be, I'm so sorry, there may be some of them that are allowed to stay, where as we get into further and further exact analysis, we'll be able to tell, but I don't think it'll be a clean keep or a clean go of all of them.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll open for public comment at 7:07. Anyone wish to speak on this? Seeing none, we will close public comment at 7:07. I appreciate the really thoughtful questions and conversation. You know, as has been mentioned many times, the saying that a project is worthy of a recommendation to approve is not saying it's a perfect project, and I think we've highlighted some challenges that we're wrestling with. One that I wanted to go back to is kind of at a high level, the change from industrial use to residential. And to go back to Mr. Allen's point in the previous item, where the office maximum building square footage is kind of out of step with the thresholds, in this case, the industrial underlying zoning was thoughtfully kept within the threshold. So a 50-plus unit project triggers a conditional zoning, and I think that is sort of to cause us to reconcile with the loss of industrial land and look at them on a case-by-case basis. So just wanted to highlight that, you know, while there may be work to do to adjust how our thresholds interact with the office zoning maximum building areas, which I would agree with the point made previously that seems like a mismatch here. We're wrestling with something that is rightfully in the higher or the lower threshold for review at 50 units. So just wanted to make that comment. Any recommendations around massaging conditions or further thoughts from the commissioners?
I'd just like to make a comment about this project and the last project kind of in general about the site locations we're seeing of these buildings. And this kind of comes from years ago, the urban centers kind of thing, which I know this is not one. But there's some problematic stuff in there, but part of one of the good things I thought in there was trying to push buildings toward the front of the street and parking lots in the back. That was just an aesthetic thing for across the city. So I'm glad that we're seeing from Warren Sugg and other developers more and more of pushing those parking lots behind buildings. I think just aesthetically that makes for a more beautiful community. So thank you, Warren, if you're the one pushing all this behind the scenes or something, but I'm glad to see more of that happening just across the board. That's kind of a general comment, not specific at this project. Yeah, I'll just echo the comments by Chair Barton. You know, I think we do have to keep an eye on the industrial uses and taking away. To me, this project doesn't seem to like be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but like it's out there somewhere. We got to be careful about how much we're committing to residential use in the name of needing more housing, which we absolutely do need, but we can't cut everything else out for it. But I mean, I'm for this project. I don't see any big issues overall with me.
Any last-minute requests of the developer? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, I did the last one. Someone else step up. Well, I'm trying to flip to it.
While you're getting there, I think the location of amenities and the kind of interconnectedness of the site plan, both internally and then the sidewalk connections externally, leave a little to be desired. Sidewalk network in this area, you know, it would be beneficial to have a holistic, comprehensive look at Sardis Road. Sidewalk connecting to the southeast is unlikely to really connect into a broader network, but to the northwest, there's kind of piecemeal sidewalk network emerging, and it'd be great if there was a holistic plan to stitch things together as we see greater concentration of residential. So it's something we deal with a lot where the requirements are the requirements. You have to put sidewalk along street frontage. It would be better if we could get sidewalk where we could connect to things, and this one doesn't necessarily. Again, it's not the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's just a frustrating thing that we always have to reconcile. I totally agree with Commissioner Cycle's comment on the playground. Really wish there was a way to pull that closer to the building so that. There is a way. Yeah, I guess wish that it was shown as such. It's hard for me to envision an on-the-fly condition to make it so, given the the site plan is the site plan, but.
Something I would like to flag that for further conversation for the UDO is that might be something we can talk about, like greater discussion about how those things are planned and how we're regulating them within like the development code. I think there are ways that we could implement that there is just generally better pedestrian orientation within the parking lots, and then the way that we're building them out could just look a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, with any land use regulations, we always have to strike the balance of being too prescriptive to allow variation on sites, but stating some kind of preferences and patterns is helpful as kind of a guiding document. Maybe it's somewhere we can look at.
I mean, I feel like this kind of language is expressed in the comp plan, which is a guiding document. And I think it's just incumbent, I agree, we can't be too stringent. And that's why I think it's just incumbent upon us, when we see projects, to just mention it, right? And so that, we use the comp plan to guide us. And so, yeah, again, to use it's not the straw that breaks the camel's back analogy or whatever. But it's like, if we keep, pushing this kind of idea of livable community, right? Hopefully we'll see more and more designs that meet that kind of livable community standard.
And I think, what I'm particularly tuned into is requirements that drive cost. The kinds of things we're talking about really don't drive cost. They're kind of achievable within the parameters of getting all the parking spaces and all the amenities located. So, yeah.
I totally agree. I think there may be one or two things that we could add in that, for example, internal sidewalks and connecting pedestrians out of their car and into their apartment. I don't see why that couldn't be having similar sidewalk standards to what is external to the building. On the street, I think if there was a 6-foot minimum or something like that, just hypothetically, just something that gives a little bit more prioritization and thought to how people are moving around in these areas. But totally agree. Don't want to be too prescriptive.
That raises a good point. You alluded to, I think, Mr. Sugg, the sidewalk width stated in project condition number 12. So it states a sidewalk width, a technical modification for a sidewalk width of 6 feet on Sardis Road, 5 feet on Graymont Lane, 5 feet internally. Are you saying that that is not what is reflected in the plans? And I was looking for the Sardis Road width and the sidewalk width along Sardis Road. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, so on C201, we call out, along Sardis, we call out a proposed 5-foot frontage sidewalk with 10-foot min grass strip from edge of pavement with existing drainage. And then on Graymont, we call out proposed 5-foot wide frontage sidewalk with 5-foot min grass strip from edge of pavement along private road with existing drainage. So I think right now we show it as 5 and 5 for what we'll call the external sidewalks. When you look at some of the internal parking lot sidewalks, we've kind of got a varying thing. We've got some 6.5 foot wide of where parking abuts, mainly where the ADA spaces are. And then we have some 10-foot wide sidewalk as you move further towards the south, which is also our safe dispersal area. We have a safe dispersal area down there by the playground. So I think right now that's how we show it. And for that reason of those things I talked about earlier with drainage and with the utilities and things like that, we'd like to stay there if we can.
I think the question is then, is the technical modification on the, does that need to change then, based on what's being shown in the plans?
Yeah, we want that to reflect what's being proposed for sure. Trying to find it. I thought I was going off of the
And if
project.
we made a mistake on our side and said 6 somewhere or another, I completely apologize.
It's okay. I think it was the draft conditions document said 6, and I just missed it on the site plan if it said 5. So it's good to clarify that tonight.
Okay.
So if it is 5, we'll need to may make that as a condition of approval, and then we can update the project conditions before it goes to city council, if that's the case.
Anyone ready to make a motion? I guess the change of condition 12 for technical modification to sidewalk width of 5 feet along Sardis Road.
Yeah, that'd be the only one.
I move to recommend approval of the conditional zoning request for property located at 230 Sardis Road from industrial to residential expansion conditional zone, as well as amend the future land use map from industrial manufacturing to residential neighborhood, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and meets the development needs of the community, and that the request, 1, prioritizes greater densities of development overall throughout the city as appropriate, 2, increases the rental housing supply, and 3, eliminates gaps in the citywide sidewalk network, with the requirement that we amend the conditions, the technical, what were they called?
The condition number 12,
Condition number 12, the technical modifications, so that the sidewalks on Sardis Road are 5 feet wide.
I'll second. Any further comments? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And last, but certainly not least, on our agenda under other business, consideration of amendments to the Commissioner's Rules of Procedure. We have run out the clock on this one, right, Miss Ashley?
The city clerk's office wants them to be signed, so, well, I don't know if we had, did we hand out the final? We made some requested changes that we discussed last time. And I did check with the city attorney about their request to amend the language about being allowed to have subcommittees. Right now, the standard process that came from the council template was if you want a new subcommittee, you need to raise that with the department. The department would then have to get approval of the city attorney and the city manager. And that is something that the city attorney just felt that we didn't want to amend further because all boards and commissions are agreeing to that. And hopefully the goal, and you understand, is that you are working with the working plan in mind and that you will be aligned. And so when you do have a subcommittee that you really want, it's not going to be met with opposition just for opposition's sake. It's if it aligns with the work plan of the department, and the capacity is there to be able to have an actual subcommittee where you can treat it as a public meeting, then the assumption should not be that you're not going to be able to get approved.
Thank you for engaging in our many requests for clarification, modification. I'm comfortable with the updated rules as presented in the last red line, but any questions or comments from other commissioners? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to.
True. No comments.
Yeah, and we don't need a public hearing on this. I'll make a motion to adopt the updated rules of procedure for the Planning and Zoning Commission as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes, and we.
Printed them so I could get
Yeah.
them to sign them
I just
tonight.
thought that
but
too.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't.
We'll do it
3
next
more
time.
months.
Next time you're around or whatever, yeah, or next month,
I'm gonna
whatever.
have to send them to you.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, that brings us to the end. Our next meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission will be March 4th, 2026, right here at 5 o'clock. Motion to adjourn. Aye. We are adjourned.